The air was heavy that night, and I remember the way the wind twisted through the gnarled branches of the forest. It whispered secrets, stories I didn't want to hear. We were just kids looking for a thrill, Mark, Lisa, Tony, and me. The kind of thing you do at 19, thinking you're invincible. The old farmhouse was a perfect dare. Creepy, abandoned, and brimming with ghost stories. I wish we'd never gone. The farmhouse stood on the edge of the woods, a rotting shell of what must have once been a proud home. Its windows were shattered, like dead eyes staring into the dark. The overgrown yard clawed at the foundation, nature slowly reclaiming what man had abandoned. We set up camp not far from it, our tents glowing faintly in the moonlight like beacons in the abyss. Tony was the first to suggest we go in. "Come on," he said, his grin too wide. "What's the point of camping here if we don't check it out?" Lisa hesitated, glancing at me for support. Her hand brushed mine. "It's just creepy, you know? Like people live there. Something bad happened." "Exactly." Tony shot back. "That's what makes it fun." Mark rolled his eyes, always the voice of reason. "We'll look around, then come back." 5 minutes. Reluctantly, I agreed. It felt like the forest itself was holding its breath as we approached the house. The porch sagged under our weight, and the door groaned open like it had been waiting for us. The smell hit me first, damp wood, mildew, and something metallic, sharp. Inside, the air was cooler, heavier. Our flashlights swept over peeling wallpaper and warped floorboards. The shadows moved like they had lives of their own. Then we found the dining room. It was like stepping into a photograph from another time. The long table was set for a feast, plates heaped with food. But it wasn't right. The meat was bloated and gray, the vegetables slimy with rot. Yet under the pale moonlight streaming through the broken window, it all looked disturbingly fresh. "Who sets a table like this and just leaves?" Mark murmured, his voice barely more than a whisper. Tony leaned in closer to the table. "Maybe they're still here," he said, smirking, but even he sounded uneasy. And then we heard it. The laughter, it wasn't loud, more like the faint sound of children playing somewhere far away. It floated down from upstairs, curling around us. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. What the hell was that? Lisa hissed. "Probably just the wind," Tony said, but his bravado was slipping. His grip on his flashlight tightened. Then I heard my name. Soft, almost tender, like a lover's whisper in the dark. "Jenna?" I spun around, but there was no one there. My heart was hammering, so hard it felt like it would break my ribs. Lisa screamed suddenly, clutching her shoulder. "Something grabbed me," she cried, tears welling in her eyes. That was it. We ran. The house seemed to breathe around us, the walls groaning as if it were alive. By the time we burst outside, the cold night air felt like a slap to the face. We didn't stop running until we reached our camp. And that's when we saw it. Our tents were destroyed, slashed to ribbons. Our sleeping bags, food, everything was scattered across the ground. Something had been through our stuff, something that wasn't human. The realization was like a punch to the gut. We weren't alone. "Guys!" Mark's voice was trembling, and when I looked at him, he was staring back at the farmhouse. They were standing on the porch. A family of 4, their skin stretched too tight over their bones, their eyes black pits that seemed to drink in the moonlight. The father held a gleaming knife, and the others followed suit, their weapons catching the faint light. They didn't move at first, just watched us like they were savoring the moment. And then they lunged. Chaos erupted. We scattered, screaming, running into the woods. I could hear Lisa and Tony behind me, their panic breaths cutting through the night. Mark grabbed my hand, pulling me forward, and I stumbled after him. The forest was a blur of shadows and branches that clawed at my clothes and face. Lisa screamed again, and this time it was cut short, sharp and chilling. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Then Tony cried out, and the sound of his agony echoed through the trees. Mark and I found a hollow tree, just big enough for the 2 of us. We crammed ourselves inside, trembling, trying to silence our gasping breaths. I could hear them, the family, moving to the woods, their footsteps deliberate and slow. They were hunting us. I don't know how long we stayed there, huddled together in the dark. Eventually, the sounds faded, but the silence was worse. It was as if the forest itself had died. When dawn broke, we crawled out, our bodies stiff and our spirits shattered. The farmhouse stood in the distance, innocent in the morning light, as if the horrors of the night had been nothing more than a bad dream. We went to the police. They were skeptical, but agreed to check it out. When we returned to the farmhouse, there was no sign of Lisa or Tony, no sign of the family. But in the dining room, the table had been set again. This time, the plates were streaked with blood. A carving knife lay in the center, its blade clean, but for the words etched into the handle. Family forever. That's when I realized they were still watching us. Somewhere, out there in the trees, waiting for their next feast. I can still feel their eyes on me when the night is too quiet. And sometimes, when the wind whispers my name, I wonder if I'll ever truly escape. It started like any other hike. Just me, the trail, and the solitude of the forest. Copper Ridge had always been my haven, a quiet escape where the weight of the world seemed to dissolve. I'd walked those trails countless times, every twist and turn of the path as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. But that day, something felt off. The first sign was a truck, rusted, ancient, and out of place. It sat near the trailhead, its windows caked with grime. No one ever came this far into the woods. For a fleeting moment, I considered turning back, but curiosity got the better of me. I told myself it was probably a hunter or some lost camper. Nothing to worry about. The forest was alive with its usual symphony. Birds calling, leaves rustling, the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. But as I ventured further, I began to notice something strange. The usual sound seemed muted, replaced by an eerie stillness that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. Then I heard it, faint laughter, a high, almost childlike giggle that didn't belong here. I froze, scanning the trees, my heart pounding. That's when I saw her. She stood just off the trail, half hidden behind a gnarled oak. Her clothes were tattered, barely clinging to her gaunt frame, and her grin stretched too wide, as though her face had forgotten how to hold a normal expression. "Are you lost?" she asked, her voice sing-song yet hollow, like wind through a broken flute. I shook my head, muttering something about being fine, and turned to leave, but she followed me, always at a distance, just close enough that I could hear her footsteps crunching on the forest floor. My pace quickened, but so did hers. I wanted to run, but something about her calm persistence made me hesitate. She wasn't chasing me, yet, and I had the unsettling feeling that running would only provoke her. Hours seemed to pass as I walked, my nerves fraying with each step. When I finally stumbled upon the cabin, relief washed over me. It was old and decrepit, its windows boarded up, but maybe someone was inside. Maybe they could help. I approached cautiously, calling out. My voice sounded foreign to me, shaky and unsure. That's when I saw the claw marks. Deep gouges ran down the door as though something or someone had tried to claw its way inside. My gut screamed at me to turn back, but before I could act, a hand clamped over my mouth. I tried to scream, but it came out as a muffled whimper. The woman was behind me, her breath hot against my ear as she whispered, "Dinner is served." She dragged me inside with a strength that didn't match her frail appearance. The cabin was worse than I could have imagined. The air was thick with the stench of rot, and the dim light revealed a nightmare. Bones, some gnawed clean, were piled in corners. A table in the center of the room displayed an assortment of tools, knives, cleavers, and things I couldn't identify, all crusted with something dark and dried. And then there were the others. For them, huddled in the shadows, emaciated figures with sunken eyes that glinted in the firelight. They stared at me hungrily, like wolves sizing up their prey. The woman shoved me toward the table, where they began binding my wrists with coarse rope. My mind raced, my body trembling as I struggled against the bindings. It was useless. Their bony hands were deceptively strong. I don't know what triggered it. Maybe it was the overwhelming fear or the sight of the bones on the table. But a surge of adrenaline coursed through me. I thrashed harder, knocking over a candle in the process. The flame caught on a pile of rags, and in seconds, the cabin was ablaze. The fire spread faster than I expected, licking at the walls and filling the room with acrid smoke. The figures screeched, scrambling like startled insects. In the chaos, I managed to free my hands. I didn't think, I just ran. Out the door, into the woods, the flames behind me lighting the way. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing in a clearing. The forest was silent again, but it wasn't the comforting quiet I knew. It was oppressive, every shadow a potential threat. I stayed there until dawn, too terrified to move, my ears straining for any sound of pursuit. When the search party found me, I must have looked insane, mud-caked, trembling, and rambling about the cannibal clan in the woods. They didn't believe me. No one did. The cabin, they said, had burned to the ground years ago. The truck? Gone by the time they checked. But I know what I saw. I know what happened. And every time I close my eyes, I see them. The gaunt faces, the claw marks, the bones on the table. They're out there, somewhere in those woods, waiting for their next meal. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear faint laughter and the crunch of twigs outside my window.